Hey everybody, and welcome back. So it's been many days now since Trump imposed those tariffs and negotiations broke down, and he's been talking about changing Lake Ontario to Lake America, which he did an executive order now, and talking about how now he has a lake, now he's a Gulf, and now he wants to do an ocean, big, beautiful, wet water ocean, maybe the Pacific or Atlantic. They'll change the name. Yeah, he's lost his marbles, but here in Canada, all the premiers seem to be on board except for one. Before it was two. It was Danielle Smith and Scott Moe. But even Scott Moe has come around because Alberta and Saskatchewan, like everybody knows, quickly changed their mind and put the liquor back on their shelves 3 months after taking it off, and the rest of Canada still has kept the liquor off the shelves. So they basically capitulated real fast. And a lot of Canadians were kind of pissed at that. But they said, let the market decide, let Canadians decide, which is a big FU to Canadians in my mind, that using an excuse as let the markets decide. But Canadians were steadfast and the sales were very low in those two provinces. But it was just more of like being united was really what pissed people off. Because you're gonna have Canadians, small minority, that just don't care and don't give a damn. But anyways, even back to my point, even Scott Moe has reversed that decision and put a 50% surcharge on any American alcohol that's being purchased in Saskatchewan now. Danielle Smith still hasn't reversed anything, hasn't taken it off the shelves, not putting a tax on it or anything. Still going with let the market decide. But not just on that, she did an announcement explaining, because people are like, there's rumors and there's calls for using the energy exports that we do to the US as bargaining chips. And we export a lot of energy to the US. And she's making a case how it would hurt the US, but it would destroy Canada. Yes, but a huge no. And there's a lot of nuance in it. Even in her speech, she'll sprinkle a little bit of truth and put a lot of inaccurate statements that is easily Googleable to find the answer that is incorrect and making it look like it would do us more harm than the US. But let's take a look and listen to what she has to say. And I want to tell you exactly where she's technically right and where she's totally wrong.
Trade. But first, I want to address the calls I've seen from some, including the NDP official opposition leader, to threaten export taxes or curtailment of Alberta's energy resources as a bargaining chip in this dispute. Although
Okay, I'm going to start just with that. You know why the NDP is calling for it? It's because they have support. This is in Alberta. Now, there's only two polls that I can find. One in 2025, April of 2025, where 36% strongly supported and 31 somewhat supported, with a total of 67% of threatening, not that they wanted to, but using it as a threat and bargaining chip to cut off oil exports to the US. This is when Trump was starting the trade war. And then there's another one in 2026. It's 58% of Albertans supporting a special export tax on Canadian oil and natural gas. So that's still 58% of Albertans support this. The rest of Canada, 100%. But in Alberta, where this is going to hurt them, 58% support an export tax and using it as a bargaining chip. So that's why she's concerned. It's and why she should be concerned if she has the support of the people, I don't understand. Maybe, just maybe, she has the oil industry chirping in her ear saying, don't let this happen because the US will not buy as much oil and we're not going to see as much profits. Therefore, it's going to affect us. We don't care what's going on. We need to make the money. That's my assumption. Because as a politician, if I have that support by the people, I'd be threatening to put an export tax 100%. Her here, she says it's not a good idea. Let her finish and continue on her other points.
Oh, I understand the need to respond strongly to these tariffs. I cannot think of a more disastrous policy decision than cutting off or taxing Alberta's oil to the United States. Doing so would absolutely devastate the Canadian economy. It would not only extinguish the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Albertans, it would economically hobble our friends and neighbors in other provinces to the east. Let me explain why. And it's important that this be understood by every Canadian. If Canada were to put, let's say, a 50% export tariff on the 4 million barrels of oil that we export daily to the United States, the United States would immediately respond with a 50 to 100% export tariff on oil and natural gas that they export to Ontario, along with millions of barrels of diesel fuel and gasoline that Ontario and Quebec import from the Midwest. This would bring the economies of Ontario and Quebec to a grinding halt. Meanwhile, all those refineries in the United States that currently use Alberta's heavy oil would start looking to Venezuela for replacement heavy oil and reverse the pipelines northward to get it to Midwest refineries. As a result, we would lose the United States as a customer entirely and likely forever. This would result in the loss of about 500,000 jobs at a minimum.
Yes, 100% in terms of they would do an export tax on us. They would technically go to Venezuela, but I'm going to get more to Venezuela. However, let's even just go on the export tax in terms of to Ontario, Quebec, and the eastern provinces, maritime provinces. We, as Canada, ship more natural gas to the US than what we import. For example, we export 8.6 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, and we import only 2.5 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas. So we export more to them than they export to us. So we're in the plus. So we would hurt them more than they would hurt us. Like it would hurt, like especially Ontario, because we use a lot of natural gas for heating. Quebec doesn't. Majority of their heating is done by baseboards, um, electric heaters, heat pumps. About 68 to 70%. Maritimes is oil, from what I understand, oil furnaces, but they're transitioning right now, currently, to heat pumps. So would it hurt us? Technically, yes, it would. Would it hurt more the U.S.? 100%, because we send more to them than they would to us. Even though we're not able to get a lot of it, like we have a pipeline coming from the west to Ontario, but it's only a third of the natural gas that we use. So we would be technically, we would have to pay more in terms of natural gas, but the United States would be paying a lot more because they're using a lot more of our natural gas. And the people in the Midwest would be complaining to their officials more so than we were, because we're all on the same page on in terms of support. The United States, or the Americans, the United States, are not supporting what Donald Trump is. So we have that advantage. We're okay with, I can't speak for everybody, but the majority of Canadians understand what could happen and are willing to go through that pain. So again, we have the advantage, more natural gas to them than what we take. So she's telling the truth, but also leaving out the details. Now, diesel, gas, and all that, 100%, but there's nuance to that. And we're going to get more into that because she's going to talk about the reserves the U.S. has. But I want to talk about Venezuela, okay? Yes, Venezuela has the same type of oil that the oil sands have, and the refineries in the U.S. are set up to refine that type of oil. We send 4 million barrels, 4 million plus of barrels of oil a day to the U.S. Venezuela, current capacity is only 1.25 million barrels per day. And to get to 3 million barrels a day from Venezuela, is going to take them 10 plus years. It's going to take 10 years to not even just get close to what we send to them right now. They'll go to Venezuela, but it'll be a drop in the bucket to what we supply them. And it's not enough. And they're hungry for oil as it is. So those refineries will not be able to do the capacity. And you hear all the time that if refineries shut down for long periods of time, they're hard to start up and it causes a lot of damage to them because of the process. I'm not exactly sure the process, but they're not supposed to shut down for long periods of time. For maintenance here and there, yes, but for months on end, no, causes damage. That's what's going on in the Middle East right now. They're having issues with the refineries, the pumping stations, and everything else. And this idea that they're going to go from the Gulf up to the Midwest with Venezuela oil, they're only supplying 1.25 million barrels a day. They're not shipping anything to the Midwest. So the Midwest are going to have an issue as well for shortage of oil. Let's let her talk about the strategic reserve that the U.S. has and how it's going to help them out.
Mostly in Alberta, but also hundreds of thousands of jobs in Ontario and Quebec. And if we cut off our oil entirely, what then? The same results, but even worse. The United States would, of course, respond and cut off all gasoline and diesel from their refineries to Ontario and Quebec, right as we turn into fall and winter. And unlike Canada, the United States has strategic oil reserves that Canada does not. So although their gasoline prices will increase, they will be able to keep them at relatively manageable prices, just as they have done through the Iran war. And without strategic...
So we're going to talk about the strategic reserves that the U.S. has, okay? And the relatively inexpensive fuel costs that Danielle Smith has said that the United States government has been able to maintain during the Iran war. First of all, let's go over the gas prices, okay? When Biden left the White House, it was at $3.10 a gallon. Right now, it's at $4.10 a gallon. And when Biden left, people were up in arms at the cost of gas. Diesel was at $3.63 when Biden left the White House. It's now $5.62. Sorry, not $62. $5.62 a gallon for diesel right now. The reserves are not doing anything, and they are not keeping it at a reasonable price. Talk to any American, and you ask them, are they okay with the fuel prices, gasoline and or diesel, which is also increasing their cost of living because everything is shipped in trucks. Now let's talk about their reserves. Okay, so at one time, they had an all-time maximum, this is 2009, of 726 million barrels of oil in the reserves, okay? These are in storage facilities all over the U.S. They even have like old mines that they fill with oil and everything else so that if they ever had like natural disaster, a war, like for example, the Iran war and everything else, they have oil to keep their economy moving, their war machine moving and things like that. So there's no disruption and they're able to do what they need to do to survive what is happening at the time. So 726 million barrels was their peak level. As of August 21st, 2026, they're at 289 million barrels. That's just under 40% of the max level. This 289 million barrels is only about 30 million barrels, just over 30 million barrels from their like floor, their limiting floor level. They have a line where when they reach a level, which is 252 million barrels, they are not going to be sending it anywhere. They're going to keep it all within the country. Now, there's ways that they could continue to send it. You know, the Donald Trump can do an executive order, this and that, but they have like a safety line. It's almost like your low fuel, like, you know, low fuel line or your low fuel light or low oil light that comes on in your dash when you're running low on oil or fuel in your car to give you a warning that there's a problem. Their low fuel and low oil light is 252 million barrels, and they're at 289 million barrels. So we cutting off the oil to the US, even though we don't have a reserve, we only use 2 million barrels a day and we produce 5. They're blowing through their reserve. And you take away 5 million or 4 million barrels a day, plus another 800 or 8 million cubic feet of natural gas, it's going to hurt them more than us. That's why it's a better bargaining chip for us. It's going to get to a point where like playing chicken, who calls uncle first? And we have the leaders, we have the people all on the same page here in this country. In the US, you have Donald Trump and everybody else that's angry with him on what he's doing. So who do you think is going to call uncle first? Even his hardcore supporters are kind of starting to scratch their head and going, what the hell is going on? So she's wrong here. They're not going to go to Venezuela. Venezuela's not going to be their new customer and supplier. It'll take them 10 plus years to reach what we do right now. Yes, they're going to put taxes on us, but they're going to call uncle first because they take more from us than we from them. And they're already in a situation where the people are pissed. So she's wrong and she's lying to you, or she's omitting that information. She's not really lying to you. What she's telling you is the truth. It's just she's not giving you all the nuance to it. The rest of it is just talks about, like, what her plan is, everything else, how we were like there for them, how we're the allies, and they betrayed our trust. It's nothing new. But at the end of the day, she's right. Well, it would hurt us. Stock market would crash, but the Dow Jones would crash even harder. We would lose jobs 100%. They would lose more jobs. But the key factor is the people and the leaders here in Canada are on the same page. In the US, they're not. And they're already surrounding the White House technically with torches and pitchforks, where they're pissed. Fuel didn't come down. Groceries didn't come down. Cost of living didn't come down. They're in a new war again, another war that's going to take years and trillions of dollars. And they're going to be, the sailors on aircraft carriers are jumping ship because of the conditions on it. They're not even taking care of their own military personnel, let alone the people in their own country. Who do you think it's going to hurt first and the most? The United States. So I've never seen her more non-patriotic now than for however long she's been in politics. Like, she's always been weaselly. This is my opinion, but she's never been for the Canadian people. She's only been for her self-interest and the industry. And that's what's going on here, is the oil companies are telling you, get the hell out there. You get on camera. You tell the Canadian citizens, don't ask, even though 58% of Albertans support putting an export tax on oil and natural gas. And the only way why she's doing this now is because those executives are telling her to tell the citizens, no, it's a bad idea, when it's not. Yes and no. I'm not going to say it's not a bad idea. There will be pain. But at the end of the day, it's what we're willing to go through, what we're willing to sacrifice, what we're willing to do. Because if we do nothing, it will be pain, and only for Canada and Canadians. Trump always talks about how Canada's been taking advantage of the US and has never been more incorrect. It will be going forward, the United States having a boot on our neck. and she's okay with that. Unpatriotic, in my opinion. Need cooler heads, 100%. But Canada's been nothing but cooler heads at these negotiating tables. So, you have to be a dick. You have to play hardball. And hardball is eventually, not saying you have to do it now, but be willing to put these bargaining chips, oil, energy on the table. Because it can work for Canada. The numbers are in our favor. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think. Even ideas that you may have to, I don't know, make the American people, even though they already know this is not good. If you go around and look at a lot of these independent YouTube channels, influencers, whatever, like American ones, have only talked about American politics, okay, political channels. You'd be surprised on how every single one of them, even some of the right wingers, I'm not saying all of them, but even some of them are showing a little bit of respect to us Canadians. But a lot of all the other left leaning ones are saying good for Canada. They're actually more respectful for Canadians than the Europeans, because they say the Europeans folded. Said, yes, master. Yes, no problem, Mr. Trump. So they're even showing us respect. Anyways, guys, take care. We'll talk later.